Hi, I'm John DeDakis. I'm a novelist, a writing coach, a manuscript editor, and a former editor on CNN's The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer. You're one to one with me, and I'm one to one with children's book author Liz Cooper. There she is. Liz, welcome to One to One.
Thank you, John. Thanks for
It,
having me.
you're welcome. It's good to see you. What I want to do is right away, I want to you've written so many children's books. I want to give you a chance to go through them and talk about them a little bit.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about the process and so on. So I have a bunch of your book covers, probably not all of them, but close. So first, talk about Bluebell Skinks.
Well, Bluebell's Wheelchair Kid was a book I wrote many, many, many years ago in the days when we typed our manuscripts, sent query letters to publishers, hoping they would pick our letter up out of the pile and ask to see the manuscript.
How
If they
long ago
said,
would this have been? How long ago
"Oh
would
my
that have been?
gosh," let's see, probably about I would say at least 30 years ago, I
Oh
think.
my. Oh my.
When I wrote this, we were still using those slide projectors in the classroom. I mean, this was a long time ago. Anyway, this was my first, actually my second attempt. It was my first attempt at a chapter book,
Mhm.
and I sent all those query letters out. Uh, Simon and Schuster actually picked up my letter and said, "Fine, send us a chapter." So I was so excited. I sent a chapter, and a few months later, because that's how long it took, they
Yep.
said, "Send us 3 chapters." A few months later, they said, "Send us the whole book." Oh boy, I thought I had it nailed. Unfortunately,
Mm.
they rejected it, which was, the
Did
way it goes.
did that
And
break your spirit?
it did and it didn't. I tried, I read it again and realized what was wrong with it, a bunch of things. I fixed them, tried to shop it to other publishers. They weren't interested. Then I got my dream job, which was one of my dream jobs, which was supervisor of instruction for reading, for my school system. So I kind of gave up on it. So I guess it
Yeah,
wasn't
you had a day you
30
had a day
years
job.
ago. Yeah,
You
it
had a
wasn't 30
day
years
job.
ago. Yeah, it was more
Mhm.
like 20. Anyway, long story short, they rejected. So when I know that you wanted to go through the books. Can I take a little
Well, talk
sidetrack
about
here?
talk about this
Yeah.
one first.
Okay. Well, what happened was, with this one, I I had a cancer diagnosis 10 years ago and thought, if I don't self publish this book, it will never get read by anybody. So I revamped it, self published it, and that's how this one came to pass.
What's the thumbnail
Oh, what's the
outline of
thumbnail?
what the book?
Bluebell Skinks is a little girl who decides to enroll herself in school without her father finding out. There are a couple of twists in this, so I won't give away the twist. But she and her sister engineer this plan when her father's out of town that she's going to put herself in school and prove that wheelchair kids can cause just as much havoc at school as anybody else and have a blast doing it. So
Okay.
that's what they did. Granny's Teeth, a collection of quirky rhyming tales, was self-published with photographs. Really got great reviews. Didn't do well in the market because the photographs were kind of creepy, I think. I've just recently redone it. It is not available right now. I'm waiting. I have a publisher who's interested in it. So if that does not come to pass, I will republish this. This did quite well with the reviewers. Um, Francois and the Tide, again, was a story I wrote. Now, this one was when, just years and years ago, entered a contest by Scholastic called I Want to Be a Children's Book Writer. It came in top 10 out of 5,000 entries.
Wow.
So I put it in my Granny's Teeth as a poem, as a standalone poem, and just recently thought, I'm going to pull it and I'm going to put it. I'm going to do what it originally was meant to be, which was a uh, children's book.
And
It's
yeah,
about a boy.
what's the gist?
What he does is he builds a sandcastle, and of course, the tide is unrelenting. Francois Riffelmeyer carefully planned to build a castle in the sand, and it goes on and
There's
says,
probably a metaphor here.
yeah, it is. It's man against nature and the sea. Actually, there's some personification. So great opportunities for the classroom because he's talking to the ocean and the ocean's yelling back and so on. Mitzi Mufflin was the second book in the series after Bluebell Skinks. It continues on with a lot of the same characters, but a new little girl comes to school who is blind. And she is named as principal for the day and thrilled. But on her special day, when it comes, none of the teachers have shown up, nor the principal. So she decides to run the school, and the kids go along with it because if any of the adults find out there are no adults in the building, the teachers will be fired in their minds, and they'll have to start the school year all over again, and no one wants to do that. So they all pretend that the teachers are there even when adults come to visit. Morris Flip's Sound Machine is about an autistic little boy who uses sound effects instead of words to communicate. He manages to, in a summer camp, to foil a group of counterfeiters who come to town, and there are all sorts of weird people lurking around the woods. So he manages to use his special gift to fool everybody.
And is there a disability involved in this as well?
Yes, he has autism.
Autism.
That's why he uses sound effects instead of words to communicate.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Superbus is about an old crummy school bus the mayor wants to ditch until the new superintendent decides that it is a super bus and needs to be kept. It goes to show that newer isn't necessarily better.
Ah, and it sounds like some politics in there.
Yeah, well, who knows?
So the teachers will probably appreciate this one too.
Yeah, I included a lot of community helpers in this one because that's what the first social studies lessons that young people learn, young children, are community helpers
Yeah, it takes a village.
Yeah.
It's the village that helps get things done, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Oh, Plinky Witch. Now this one I can tell you exactly when I wrote it. I wrote this one in rhyme. It's not in rhyme anymore, but I wrote this one in rhyme when my youngest son was in kindergarten. He is now 40. So you can do the math there. And I originally drew this on just a sketch pad with colored pencils. Well, I have now learned to do it, work with digital. I took a couple of art courses in the local college just for the grains of it, but I re-digitalized it or just perked it up and have discovered I love using my iPad to do the art. So that's, oh, I'm sorry. I should back up on that one. Plinky Witch has decided that Halloween would be just dandy if it was every day of the year.
Well,
not
of course.
such a good idea. Yeah.
I'm doing it because of the candy. I still have my stash down here of the candy that the kids didn't, you weren't enough kids. So
exactly. Well, Plinky Witch goes on to try to buy Christmas presents for her pals in the Happy Broomsticks Club. Unfortunately, she doesn't have the money, so she decides to get a temp job at the North Pole as a temporary elf.
Is this out now? This one's out.
Figure out where that goes. Yeah.
This one's out now, correct?
Yes, this one's out now.
Disability involved?
No.
Okay.
No, this is just for fun. The Clever Little Witch in striped stockings, Plinky Witch and the Runaway Valentine. Cupid needs some help. The Happy Broomsticks are happy to help him. Only Plinky Witch goes one step further and accidentally casts a spell that makes the Valentine run away, and the rest of the Valentines follow. So she goes all over town looking for these poor Valentines that are just hiding on every page.
Is this about unrequited love?
No, it's more or less she wanted to prove that she could be a helper too. And the other witches were just not really sure that she was going to be the right person to help. This one, I took everything I knew about or in my opinion anyway, about reading instruction. The reading groups I used to run in my classroom, my third grade classroom, and put it in a book because I always wished I had more time to help parents help their children read a little better. For instance, I'll give you one example. The first thing people do when they sit down and read with a child and the child makes a reading mistake is what do? They tell the kid the word. There are that is such a wrong thing to do.
Why?
There are so many ways. Why? Because number one, you don't give the child an opportunity to see if maybe they said something that doesn't make any sense. Okay, that's a comprehension issue. If I say I'm going to the horse and have lunch, okay, doesn't make sense. Again, let's look at that word horse. Let's see why we didn't read that correctly and what can we do to fix it. But if you stop them right away, it also ruins the whole flow of the story. So you want to wait until you get to the end of a part of a paragraph or the end of the page, whatever, and say, let's go back and talk about that. You went to the horse for lunch. Does that sound quite
It's
right?
sort of like the Socratic method, right?
And let's look at the word. Let's see, maybe write it on a pad. Like, let's see, you read the beginning of the word, you read the ending, but let's look at that middle piece. And you'll also see if your child has patterns of errors that they continually make. So let's find a bunch of words with OU and see if we can just read them, post them on the fridge. And we've learned some new words today, a new sound combination. But
Now
anyway,
you
that kind of thing.
Okay, well, and you have a master's in reading education,
I do.
and you're passionate about literacy.
I do.
I've heard that there's a controversy between phonics and the whole word approach. Are you aware of that, and where do you come down?
That's been for years. And I actually, there are 5 major areas of reading that a child has to master before they can become an able reader. They are phonemic awareness, being able to hear the difference in sounds, just hearing them. Hearing that words rhyme, or the difference between th and s and the s sound. So that's phonemic awareness. Phonics, very important. You have to understand what letters make what sounds, what combinations. Fluency, you have to read at a fast enough clip so that you don't lose the meaning of a story before you get so bored that you just start thinking about something else. Comprehension, that's understanding what the whole thing is trying to tell you and being able to think about it. And the last comprehension, and oh my gosh, I've lost the last one just because I'm probably
Well, maybe,
a little
yeah,
bit
well,
but there's
it may
5.
come back, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And what about whole word? Is that something
I'm
that
sorry.
whole word?
Oh, whole word. Actually, you need all of it, and most I think most schools are. We certainly were. We were getting into phonics big time, but that's not the only thing. Going out and getting a phonics program, if your child is a struggling reader, is not necessarily going to fix it if one of the other areas of reading are the problem. And the last one I forgot before was vocabulary. Just knowing what words mean when you see them. If I say resilient, do I even understand what that word is? I might be able to read it. A lot of parents come to us, or used to come to us when I was in the position, and say, I need to elevate my child to the next grade level. They read just great. Well, they might sound good, but they might not be able to understand at a deeper level. Critical thinking is important.
Which will happen in a one-to-one interface with the kid, right?
Right, which is why with Granny's Teeth, what I did was I put a number of questions at the end of the book that you can use to discuss with your child, not just, oh, did you like the story, but hey, do you think Francois well, Francois is not in this one. Do you think Bertram Butternut made a good decision when he did this? Why? What would you have done differently? That kind of thing is a much more fun way to talk about your stories, and it's good thinking.
Okay.
Kind of
Literacy, I mean, and this is really interesting. And of course, literacy is important. But we have something going on now, book bans. where, you know, they're not politically, you know, they're not, uh, some conservatives are alleging that the books are indoctrinating kids into, you know, deviant behavior and stuff like that. Where do you come down on that?
What I come down on is that critical thinking is so important to be able to discuss something at a deep level, not just discuss, understand and think about something. How can I say this? If you are a critical thinker, you don't necessarily believe everything you read. You understand that there's something called bandwagon, where somebody here says everybody's doing it. Everybody knows that blah blah blah. Well, who's everybody? If you're a critical thinker, you look into that a little more. Your brain goes in a slightly different direction. Say, well, I'm not sure I actually believe that. I'd like to see who the everybody is. Or is that just somebody telling me something 50 times over and I'm going to believe it, which a lot of, by the way, is happening right now, but that's another story. Um, I think it's really important for kids to be exposed to different experiences. That's why I'm writing about the kids with disabilities. They are funny characters. They are not the victim being bullied by the bad guy. My stories aren't like that. My characters just happen to have a disability, but I want kids who read them to maybe see somebody in a different way and give them a chance before they decide that they're not going to like them. When I was a teacher, a third grade teacher, I had kids on the playground, very marginalized, and no one would ask them to play. That, you know, they'd just be sitting there in a wheelchair or whatever. And so I would go over and play catch with the child or whatever, and, you know, invite other kids in. But I wanted my readers to see these kids as an opportunity lost if they don't at least aren't at least friendly with them. They don't have to be best buds, but they need to not just write them off or ignore. Mitzi Mufflin, being an African American little girl who is blind, is an unusual character. And because she was unusual, it's kind of a funny story with this one. May I digress just a little bit on
Sure,
this?
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I was at the Baltimore Book Festival and I saw I was writing Mitzi Mufflin at the time. Bluebell Skinks was out, but Mitzi Mufflin was not, and I was in the process. But I'm not blind. I don't know a whole lot. Never had a blind child in any of my classes. I had a deaf child, but never blind. So long story short, I saw a woman walking by with a white cane, and she had a little girl with her with a white cane, about the age of Mitzi, by the way. And they're plopping along. Well, what did I do? I ran after them. Ma'am. Well, she told me later she thought she was going to, we were on the harbor. She was afraid she was like headed towards the water. So she didn't know why I was chasing her. But I said, can I talk to you? And I introduced myself and I said, look, I'm writing a book with a blind character. I would love someone to read it and make sure I'm spot on, or I'm at least, being respectful and have my details right. Do you know anyone who would be willing to do that? And she said, well, I will. And it subsequently became very friendly. She invited me to her home. I spent the day with her and her two blind daughters. They invited me to go to in Baltimore. They invited me to go to the National Federation for the Blind. Toured their whole I got a beautiful tour of the entire building. Her husband is the president of the National Federation of the Blind.
Who knew?
Yeah, who knew? I mean, what a coincidence. He's blind also. They have one sighted son, but the whole family is blind. It was fascinating. She invited me to, like I said, to their home. I had lunch. She said, what do you want for lunch? She gets on her phone. She ordered the takeout. I mean, it was incredible. I'm following her down the street, by the way. We walked from the Federation building to to their townhouse. And I was so afraid she was going to bump into something. Now, who am I to know, So I had to really stop myself. I thought, listen, this woman was born blind. She knows what she's doing. But I was so impressed with the entire family. And they invited me actually to join the board of the Maryland Library for the Blind and Print Disabled. So I'm now on the board, and I have met a slew of blind folks. So it's
I just taught a class for them online on how to write a novel,
I
and
know they were saying that at the meeting, they were saying they were going to invite you to be a keynote speaker. I was their keynote speaker a couple of years ago. So yeah, so be ready for that call, because like I said, I'm on the board.
okay, well, who
Anyway,
knew?
that was how, but my next book, the one I'm doing now, actually it's done. I hired a sensitivity reader who is profoundly deaf, because Oslo Ming, magician extraordinaire, is about a deaf child who is an expert magician. They solve a mystery in school. They find a tunnel system underneath. It has to do with the local old folks home. They're going to save the old folks home from extinction. And they get into all sorts of, they find marbles all over town. It's just a lot about marbles. My plots are all over the place, but I try to make them really interesting. So the next one, and the next one I'm doing after this one, I think the child has cerebral palsy. I'm pretty sure
You're
it's
not.
going to be a case reporter. So I might be actually asking you for some, to be my,
Yeah, run away. That would mean.
yeah. So anyway, that's the list. I think I
You're
have
not.
other books
Yeah,
on deck, but that's, there we go.
you're not type A, are you?
Oh my God. I am so sorry. If anybody's listening to this, I think they have a headache by now, but I'm sorry. I talk fast. I'm also from New York, and I grew up in New York, and I'm sorry. We're just quicker up there. Maryland is really, I've lived here for almost 45 years now, and it's really, you know, they're not fast enough for me. So,
And we were talking just before we went on the air about writing children's books as sort of a second career, and you go,
uh-uh.
fifth
Fifth,
career, fifth career.
fifth.
What have you done in your life?
Okay, I was a nurse. I was an OB nurse. Okay, that's my first one. Oh, it was a passion. I loved it. But when we moved down here from Washington, D.C., we lived in Washington, D.C. for 4 years. I was at the Washington Hospital Center, and I actually graduated from Catholic University when my husband was at Georgetown Dental. So we moved down, and the hospital here was really teeny. So I became a school nurse. So I was a school nurse for a year. And then I decided, after I had kids, I thought, I'd like to be a teacher. I think that would be really fun. Went back to school, became a teacher, went back to school, got my master's in reading. Actually went back to school for a teacher, just for a teaching certificate. I still had a bachelor's in nursing. So, and they took me as a teacher for that. Where am I? I had 2 toy and children's bookstores for about, I don't know, about 8 to 10 years. And that just became a pain in the neck when the economy went south.
So you're sort of entrepreneurial. You're entrepreneurial as well.
Yeah, that's when I decided to become the teacher. So I was a teacher, kindergarten, 3rd grade, instructional resource teacher, and then supervisor of instruction for reading, which really included writing as well, writing instruction for all 12 grades, reading and writing. And what else? After that, I retired, and I
Yeah, right.
business. Yeah, Seabury Organizers. I started a business. I invented a knitting needle holder, which is partially, I have a patent. And I went all over the country, had a little factory for a while with folks. My employees were from social services. They needed the job training, and I got them for free. But I just got burned out. I did a lot of it myself, and with industrial machines and sewing machines and stuff. And I said, forget that. So
where did you learn
then I
how?
had then I had my cancer diagnosis, which was really good because it made me stop.
Slow
And
down. Yeah.
slow down. That's when I decided I needed to first, before I did that, I went to the Atlantic School of Sleep Medicine, which is only a week-long, really intensive program where they get you started with becoming a sleep tech. But then I studied this stuff for another year or two because it takes forever it's the hardest thing I've ever studied. It's medical doctor grade material. You have to know about the brain and all the brain chemicals and stuff. It was harder than nursing. I could not believe how hard it was. Passed the national boards, And by that time, my husband had a sleep dentistry little side practice going. So I was going to work in the sleep lab, which I did for about a month. And I said, I'm not working nights anymore. Forget that. That's when I got that's when I decided to just lay low for a while. And it took me and that's when I started the writing in big, big, big time.
Oh, and
So,
what about illustrating? Where did you just teach yourself how to do
oh,
that? How did that come about?
oh, well, I got to tell you, funny story. I had that, I told you I had that, the book Bluebell Skinks, and Maria Santucci illustrated it for me, and we became really good friends. And she did it on her iPad. So she showed me her iPad, and she told me about a program called Procreate. So I took photographs of my old pictures from Plinky Witch, and that's when I started playing, and I learned, and she helped me a little bit, but I learned. And Maria has since unfortunately passed away.
Hmm.
So, I really just such a loss. But I learned to do this stuff myself, and this was you didn't have this one before, the Plinky Witch in the surprise birthday party, where she decides to throw herself her own surprise party, which makes no sense to anybody in the universe, and nobody can find it. They're looking all over town for this poor birthday party, and they don't know where it is, and she won't tell them, because why? It would ruin the surprise. So that's how, in fact, finally she falls asleep under a tree, and after they decide to surprise her back. But
One of the things I've heard about children's books is that it is very hard to break into traditional publishing as a children's author. Is that true?
it's almost impossible. You have to have an agent. You just do. And they will not touch anything most of the time that has been self-published. If I went to them and said, I have another book in the series, and these are self-published, well, they're not self-published anymore, these have been picked up, but I have another book in the series, they can't do it. They said no traditional publisher wants anything that's been out there. So no matter how good it is, they don't care. One exception happened with me. It was very unusual. I actually, a person I hired to help me with the marketing plan for my, these were called the Possibilities. Get it? Mortimer Potts Elementary School Possibilities, not disabilities. They've renamed the series now, by the way. But she mentioned this to a publisher, an educational publisher she was working with, and they were very interested, and they have, with a lot of back and forth, they picked them up last year and have been working on them ever since. They've renamed the series. It's going to be called, I think, either the Mortimer Potts series or the Mortimer Potts School series. And they are a company called Light Switch Learning. And they specialize in social emotional books for big school systems. Those are their biggest customers, mainly New York City public schools with 1 million students. That's their main customer, but they do Chicago City schools. They do all over the place.
What's your advice for someone who has an idea for a children's book?
It has to be a good story. It has to be.
What does good mean?
Okay, good is not, okay, little bear was going to the store, and his mother said, oh, don't cross the street without looking, and little bear didn't listen and almost got hit, and oh, he's learned his lesson and he'll do better next time. That's not an interesting story for a kid. They like odd twists. They like
character development.
Yeah, they like a good character. The illustrations are important. The editing is super important. It has to be correct. You can't depend on yourself. I got nailed. If you look at any of my reviews on Amazon, there's one that said, one lady wrote, there are so many mistakes in this book, I can't even read it to my class. Well, there really weren't. There was like one or two, and they're fixed. But you just never. You have to be accurate. But there are 32 million books on Amazon. Okay, 32 million. You have to you have to market yourself. You can't just put it on Amazon, for instance, self-publish and stick it up there and expect it to do anything. No one's going to find it, your friends and family. So you have to get it out on social media. You have to talk about it. You have to do things like I'm doing today. Thank you, John. And it's hard. It's tough with children's books. You're not going to make a million bucks. Trust me. Do it as a joy and a fun thing to do. And if you sell a few now and again, great. I was lucky. I've done my sales on Plinky Witch. The Halloween one has gone into the thousands. Not the case with my other ones. You know, it's very iffy. Yeah.
I want to talk about illustrations again for a second, because one of the things I've also heard is that publishers really like to choose the illustrator. So you may be wedded to someone, you know, who's going to illustrate your books, or you may think you're a whiz bang illustrator, but the book is going to be picked up based on the strength of the characters and the story, as opposed to the illustrations. Am I right?
Yes, that was the case years ago. I don't have that much experience now because because of the cancer thing, which, by the way, I'm cancer free, so I don't mind talking about it. But the fact of the matter is they have their own ideas. I know the traditional big ones, they've got their own illustrators. These folks who took my books on, they have the right to change the title, the series name. I thought they were going to change. They had me change the covers. And because Maria had passed away, I took her interior art and fiddled with it myself. And it was enough. It was good enough for them. But I don't know what
do you have an agent?
Just give us a manuscript. Quit, you know.
Yeah. Do you have an agent?
I don't.
How did you swing that? How were you able to get it published without an agent?
The woman who did my marketing plan mentioned it to them, and one thing led to another. It was very strange. It was one in a million. It happened to be something that spoke to them, and they told me they're very excited about these because they don't have anything like it. So we'll see. It's coming out 2024. Light Switch Learning. I don't know if they'll be on Amazon. I don't think so. I'm not sure, but there'll be a link for my website. Liz Cooper. LizCooperAuthor.com. Yeah.
And there's a contact me portal on there, so that if anyone wants to send you an email or anything, they can do it through your website, LizCooperAuthor.com. And it's not case sensitive, but we have it capitalized in the proper places so you can see the words differentiated.
Yeah, during COVID, I learned everything I could about marketing, but also about formatting. I learned how to format my own books. So
that's pretty tricky. That's very complicated.
That's very tricky. And I've done sessions for folks on it for my local writing chapter and all. It's not that hard. You just have to follow the directions very carefully. Self-publishing isn't that hard. The hard thing is, once you do it, what are your next steps? That's the hard part.
Wow. Well, I'm sure people will probably have questions for you about that. Is there anything else you want to talk about that I haven't asked?
Oh gosh.
This is a home run pitch, Liz.
Boy, that's a hard one. Just that, again, with all of this, it's been a lot of fun, met a lot of great people. I welcome, anybody that wants to email me. My email is on or the contact is on my website. I love talking about this stuff. And
I can tell.
Yeah.
You're enthusiastic. Go ahead.
No, that's kind of it. I like you say, I'm an A personality. It's obvious. But
well, what's your advice though for an introvert? Because a lot of writers are introverts.
But your writing doesn't have to be. That's the best thing. Introvert, you can do your marketing online. Right now, I'm taking a pretty extensive Instagram class. So and that's why my Instagram is not. I haven't posted anything for a long time because it's taking me forever to get through this class. And now I'm afraid to post anything until I finish it. But I'm going to do the little movies and all of that, and I haven't quite learned. I'm getting there.
That's a full-time job.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, it is a full-time job. I know you're doing this full-time.
Well, I mean, I have a lot of irons in the fire. I mean, I'm a manuscript editor, a writing coach, one-on-one. I teach writing at different writers' centers and at writing conferences. I write novels. I do some ghostwriting. Yeah, so it's not just one thing, but marketing is certainly part of it. But it can be a real time suck, and you have to kind of balance your time.
Can I mention how we met?
Sure.
I don't know if you remember. You should remember. We were both at a book event, and John was the keynote speaker. He's a good speaker, by the way. Everybody out there, you need to hear his talk, his main talk. It's
JohnDeDakis.com.
Yeah, I agree. But he gave the talk and invited me and a couple of others out to dinner afterward, and we had just the best conversation. And he said, do you know anybody down in your area in Southern? Well, I probably shouldn't mention that. Southern Maryland that would like to have a writing class. I do this 2-day class, and I said, well, we'll host it at my house. So he came down, and we actually went to one of my husband's dental offices, and the staff there heard the talk, and then he came down and did it at my house. A couple of met my 2 kittens at the time, who are now like huge cats,
monster panthers,
and they love it. The neighborhood is still talking about this.
No kidding.
Yeah, they really enjoyed it, and subsequently, I don't remember what else. I think.
I mean, we've known each other for a long time.
Yeah, a couple of times. But anyway, but it's just you meet the best people, and it's really fun when other people are writing different genres than you are, because it's a completely different thing. I think I showed him one of my books at the time, and I think he had a big question mark over his head because it wasn't something he was used to reading, the kids stuff. But and I think I'm funny. I don't know. My books are all funny.
Well, you're definitely fun. You're definitely a fun person. And, I mean, I think that, yes, when you come across people with different genres, obviously there are differences, but there's so much overlap as well. Just the desire to connect with someone through your writing, no matter what it is that you're writing. And then it's just, and I think that's where our commonality is. I mean, I feel like such a slug when I talk to you because, I'm not doing nearly as much as you are and nearly as effectively, but your enthusiasm is infectious.
And, thanks.
And
thanks.
So
I'm always sorry after every conversation I ever have with anybody and say, "Oh, John, gosh, I wonder what they're thinking." But it's a lot of fun, and certainly, it keeps my brain busy. It's very important, to be the age, after the big 7-0, which is like, oh.
Well, you're well preserved, ma'am.
Thanks. like a piece of fruit. It's just like, I don't know how complimentary that is, but I don't know.
Well, listen, this has been delightful.
You're not dead yet. They talk about age on TV all the time as being so old. You're not done, and you're not done if you're still breathing. So,
oh man, I mean, when I turned 40, that's supposed to be the big, it wasn't a big deal. 50 wasn't a big deal. 60 was a big deal because everyone, when I was growing up, who was 60 was old. Yeah. And so I had to kind of get my head around that. When I turned 70, which was a couple of years ago, my mental state is that I am going to live as if I've got another 30 years. Now, I'm not assuming that, but
Yeah.
I'm going to keep on
You
going
never
until I.
know. My mother's 94 and taught herself to speak French during the pandemic on her computer. So hey, you're not done. But my cancer diagnosis is what did it for me. 10 years ago, stage 3. I thought,
I
okay,
mean, there's nothing like your mortality.
I'm not even gonna worry about it. I'm gonna do what I need to do, but I'm gonna enjoy and not waste 1 minute of whatever time I've got left because people could be hit by a bus the next day.
What's
But
the difference? Let me ask you then
Mhm.
the difference between living frantically to try to fit in everything and living mindfully. Have you made that distinction?
I was frantic about being published. That bothered me a lot. That the book, it's Bluebell. I liked Bluebell so much that the end made me cry when I read the end the first when I hadn't seen it for a bunch of years. I read it and I thought, oh my god, this is pretty good. There's some twists. There's a twist that I'm not going to tell you, but I just and I love the ending of Mitzi. I love the ending of Morris Flip because at the end everybody around them has just kind of embraced them and and they did that because they showed they were just really capable and fun people, not because and the other kids just don't even realize anymore. They don't pay attention to the disability, which is what I wanted them to do. And I
And
wanted the reader to not care that the kid had a disability. Like, the more you read, you say, oh, this isn't a sad book about a kid being disabled. I'm not even depressed about this kid
right.
because
And what I'm hearing is we were talking about being frantic as opposed to being mindful.
oh yeah,
And
sorry, I lost track there. Yeah.
but what I'm taking away from this is that once you immerse yourself in the stories that you're writing, that that kind of fuels your enthusiasm, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, my characters. I love my characters. I love French Fry, Frederick Fry. His name, they call him French Fry. I love French Fry. I love Hoops. If there's a little bit of a bully, it's Hoops. The basketball player kid. I love these characters. Mia and Kia. They're the little security guards in the school. Their parents are police officers, so they think they need to investigate everything. So I love those kids. The trouble with my books, though, I have too many characters, and that's like I have over 20. Well, I have a class full of characters. So what I have to kind of cycle them. Mitzi appears a lot in Morris Flip because but well, and so does some of the. Well, they all do. They all reappear,
Yeah.
but I I love diversity. It's very important to me.
Why?
Um, why? Why? Because no child should feel marginalized because of the color of their skin, their abilities or disabilities, or where they come from, or how much money they have. No kid, all kids have huge potential. Every single kid on the planet, and I'm disgusted by what's happening in the world right now. Absolutely disgusted.
What is it
But
that disgusts you the most?
the anti-Semitism, for one, that's just one thing. I'm disgusted at the racism. I thought that was all gone. Silly me. What did I know? Very dumb of me. And even though I grew up in an all-white town on Long Island, I'm disgusted. I just, on the behalf of all children, I try to make them feel like this book includes me.
I
Or
mean,
I don't. And Light Switch is a great company, by the way. They are very, very mindful, especially since New York City public schools, apparently, I haven't taught there, but they have of course, a large diverse population. And Light Switch was extremely mindful of my characters. And I actually, with their tutelage, I actually changed the ethnicity of a couple of them. Like you'll see on Amazon, like one character on the cover is white. He's now black, it made perfect sense. I said, oh my gosh, I only have one black kid in any of the illustrations, and all the people on the cover are even white. That's not good. So we mixed it up some, and it made the book so much better.
and you must have been devastated by the Sandy Hook massacre.
Oh my goodness. I can't even tell you all of the maskers, whether they are old, young. I have a transgender sibling, and I'm telling you, everybody. I love everybody. I love everybody. Everybody. I want to be friends with everyone. I don't care unless you are mean to other people. Then I don't want anything to do with you. Yeah, goodbye. But honestly, I think now what you're talking about with the book banning, by the way, when I write, and I'm kind of paranoid about not that I am sort of now, but before that, I was very, very careful always to say, is this offensive to anybody? And I didn't want to get into really deep stuff. I didn't even mention anywhere in my book, Mitzi Mufflin, that she's Black. I always saw her as a Black character. But it occurred to me when they did the, and this is the Braille version.
Oh, right. Let me get a
Yeah, this is the
solo
Braille
on
version.
this.
Can you see this?
And tilt
They
it a
did
little
put
bit
the
so we
cover on
can
there.
see because it looked.
Yeah, this is. I never mentioned in here that she's Black, and I probably should. Oh, she's not Black. Excuse me. They brailled all three books. They brailled Mitzi also, but this I only have the Bluebell in Braille. I should have actually. I'm gonna reach for it. I probably should have mentioned it because the blind children don't know. And one thing they were really excited about, they said, blind Black girls are not represented in literature, blind Black girls. And I said, oh, darn, they won't know unless somebody tells them that Mitzi is blind. Or Black. I didn't want to make a big deal about any of it. To me, it was more about the story. And I just thought of something else. May I take a bunny trail real quick? You asked me about advice to children's stories.
Right.
To me, the stories have to move very quickly, very, very quickly. To me, I don't do a lot of description. I don't do a lot of, like any of that. The kids have an attention span of like minus 10 seconds. So if you don't get right into the story and make it good, forget it, because they're not going to care what color the sky was and all of that. You can throw it in, but you have to be very mindful of that. And that's probably the biggest thing. When I say good story, good characters, in the case of illustrations, if there are any good illustrations. So I know I'm kind of back and forth. I'm sorry, whoever is listening to this.
Liz, you need to work on your shyness.
I'm so sorry. But yeah, I'm sort of known for it. I'm sorry. It's like,
You are who you are, and I think you're wonderful. And I'm so glad that you've taken the time to to talk with me. I'm John DeDakis. You've been one-to-one with me, and I've been one-to-one with Liz Cooper. Liz, thank you very much. This has been so much fun.
Thank you. You'll need a drink tonight to recover.